Thank you for joining us today. This is part two of the first part of Intricacies of Walking After Stroke with the owner of Neuro Thrive PT, the remote company. But yeah, let's go ahead and welcome Dr. Sam.
Hey
She'll take it over.
guys, I'm happy to be back and to give a little bit of more information about walking after stroke. So I think in our last live, we kind of discussed like what things could really be going wrong following a stroke and really like how we would identify and target those things, specifically like from like an examination perspective. So today is going to be more about like intervention. So like what actually can be done to improve your issues with walking. So Pat, would you be able to give us a little bit of background on like what you used to get so great at your walking? Like what did your journey look
Uh,
like?
it has been an evolution, I would say. I started off in a wheelchair, and then I was using a walker for the longest time, but each time I think I made a transition. I've had to kind of change things. So, or I'd have to adapt to it. But I would say my number one thing is just practicing it so much. And I do pay attention to when I go faster versus when I go slower, and I pay attention really to every little detail. I think that has helped me a lot.
Yeah. I think there's in stroke recovery, there's just like such a huge umbrella of different things that you can, that one could be affecting your walking, and then of course how you can target those things, and always looking to progress yourself, to continue to challenge yourself with your walking, um, and making sure that you're doing as much practice as possible because um, really like what we need to do is just practice as many times as possible, get as much repetition with that skill as possible to get better at it. So a lot of therapy theory and like interventions are based in the principles of neuroplasticity. So if you guys aren't familiar, neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change and to make new pathways. And this is one way that we really use the beauty of like the changeability of the brain to recover following a stroke. And huge main things that we see with pushing for that change to happen is making sure that we're doing things at high intensity, so you're actually pushing yourself and challenging yourself. So typically we want you working at what would be like a 6 to 8 out of 10, higher heart rates, like really getting the heart pumping, because if the heart's pumping, then we know that you're being challenged, and we're getting better perfusion to the brain as well, right? So getting more blood to the brain in the areas that we're lacking in. Then we also want a lot of repetition. So high repetitions. The more steps you get in a day, the better. So there's actually really good research that shows that if you do more stepping during therapy, or you do more stepping in general, like more stepping practice inside of therapy or with your therapy program, you're at a higher likelihood of doing more steps outside of therapy. So that shows that not only are you working on your walking during the therapy sessions, but also outside of the therapy session. So there's just in general a larger amount of practice that you're getting. Um, and again, it kind of lends itself to being really good at home exercise programs and sticking to a really good program, even when you're not in therapy, because the more practice you get is the better. We don't want to just be walking for those few, 45-minute to an hour long sessions a week, right?
Yeah.
So we've got the intensity, we've got repetition. Then we have task specificity, which means, to improve your walking, we really have to walk. We can work on strengthening, balance, all those different things in other ways. But again, like the research behind physical therapy really shows that if we want to get better at walking, we have to actually walk. Typically, if we work on a balance challenge, like balancing on one foot, we see in research that the person gets better at balancing on one foot, but it doesn't necessarily carry over to getting better balance during your walking. So the best way to target really all of these things with any issue that you're having with walking is doing it as much as you possibly can at high intensities while you're walking. So if we want to get better endurance, let's challenge our endurance while we're walking. If we want to get better balance, let's challenge our balance while we're walking. So it all has to be
Mhm.
really into real walking activities. What is your like everyday steps look like? Are you getting good steps in, or did you really focus on that during your recovery?
Yeah, I really did. I think in the beginning I was like using a walker, and then I was walking outside after a while, and then I used the treadmill a lot too at another stage.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful. Treadmills are great.
yeah, I like the treadmill because you can adjust like the incline, the intensity. And before I was holding on to it with two hands, and then after a while I did one hand, or yeah, one hand, and now I'm at the point where I don't need my hands anymore. But you can see it like evolves, and then I started increasing the speed. If I can't do the incline, I started increasing the speed. And so you can start seeing it change. And so, yeah,
Yeah,
I just measure it and
that's
continue it.
one really, I mean, the treadmill in general is a great tool to use for walking recovery because it allows you to get that repetition that we need, like in one space versus like doing circles around your house during the winter time when it's like not that warm out and
Oh, I see.
you're not going to
Yeah.
like you can go to the gym and get literally miles done. But it's very easy to track your progress, which helps with seeing, you know, are you getting better? Are you able to take more challenge? Are you able to even stay on the treadmill for 30 seconds longer? And like you said, you can challenge a bunch of different things. You can challenge your speed, which is something that we consider like the propulsive aspect of walking. So a lot of people following stroke walk very slow. So we want to work on like that powerful muscle drive and better endurance. Increasing speed on a treadmill is a perfect way to do that. Um, Balance, if you want to challenge your balance during your walking, letting go of the rails or using one rail versus two rails. That's the idea of like what I was saying, challenging your balance during walking, perfect way to do it. Or even you can walk sideways on the treadmill. That's a balance challenge, backwards on the treadmill. Um, and then the inclines, great way to increase challenge, great way to improve the strength of your push off. So being able to really propel yourself forward with your calf and then also strengthening the glutes. So those are all really great ways that like you can use a treadmill in your recovery and your everyday life to target issues that you're having with your walking.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I mean, there's walking pads that we can even get in our houses now. I mean, I think COVID there were so many negative things that came out of COVID, but there was a lot of like positive, innovative things that were developed, and that was like
So,
improving home exercise use and equipment. Where the use of walking pads at these little tiny treadmills for like $200 has like that industry skyrocketed. I don't even think that was a
yeah, I
thing.
wish I had that. I don't remember that at that time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my parents got one. I've seen like people who work from home, they have walking pads underneath their desks to get their steps in. It's like a whole new thing that these like very small, compact little treadmills versus having,
Yeah,
the big ones that we
that's true.
get.
Yeah.
So it
And
makes
it's
it a
pretty
little bit,
affordable that I heard.
yeah, yeah. Amazon, baby, they have them.
Love Amazon.
So yeah, so treadmill is a great thing to do. If you're struggling with things like your endurance is tough when you're walking, your balance, your ability to walk on an incline or get nice strong push off. However, so that in different grades of therapy and walking, that would is what I would consider like treadmill training. But overground training is very good as well because it's very relatable to everyday life. So there's only obviously the treadmill can challenge you in different ways, but
Yeah.
it's varying your activity is a huge way to make those neuroplastic changes and making sure that the activity is very realistic. So like walking over ground is different than walking on a treadmill. I don't know if anyone has ever run on a treadmill versus trying to do road running. That's like
So
a
different.
complete
I'm so
where like
glad.
the treadmill propels you a little bit versus you had to propel yourself over ground. And now over ground also gives you different variability in your environment. So like just the surface that you're working over, say we're outside, walking on pavement, cracks in the sidewalk, walking on grass, gravel, sand, all those different things give our body different challenges for our balance, for our ability to know where our body is in space, environmental awareness. So inclines, declines, people around. So having that variability in your programming or just in your everyday life will also help with improving walking overall. Um, Now, I know we spoke a lot about things like drop foot, so like those very particular gait mechanic issues. Now, another thing that like in the research that we see is just like how I was saying, if you get really good at like balance exercises that like standing on one foot, it doesn't necessarily translate to um, your actual walking balance. So similar to like dorsiflexion exercises, they don't necessarily translate exactly to improved dorsiflexion or swing clearance when you're walking. So, but I don't mean to say that we shouldn't be targeting the strength on its own as well, because there is benefit to that, where sometimes when we do a functional task, it's very common for us to compensate with all the other muscles that are working at the same time, using momentum, using our hip, our knee, or whatever to help clear the foot. So I do think it is important to isolate and strengthen certain muscles like the dorsiflexors in different ways, then also always carrying it over to a functional task like walking maybe over hurdles. So being able to lift and clear your foot, having a little bit of feedback to yourself where you don't want to hear your foot dragging on the floor. It helps you make that correction. Even stair climbing helps you really clear the foot, and walking on an incline, right? You got to lift your foot up a little bit more than you would if you were
Yeah.
on flat ground. So those are like three really nice ways to integrate dorsiflexion or that foot drop strengthening and targeted gait training, not only by just doing dorsiflexion, but integrating it into actual walking. So we do have that better carryover of, okay, I'm working on my dorsiflexion. Is it actually improving my dorsiflexion during walking?
Oh, these are all really good points because it's been some time. So then, I've done all of that. So I like hearing it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think when we have something that I always work with my clients on, and I feel people struggle with a lot, is feeling that there's like a huge mountain in front of you of things that you have to target during your recovery, right? I got to work on my foot. I got to work on my balance. I got to work on this. When you're able to pick a functional task like walking, you can target so many things at the same time. So many exercises or walking programs that I like to give my clients include exercises and walking programs that integrate multiple things at once. So it doesn't have to be 30, 40, 50 exercises. It could be solid 5, 6, 7, 8 exercises with a 30-minute walking program that targets all of those things so you don't feel overwhelmed. We can target your balance, your clearance, all of that in just one nice exercise or walking program, because it really can be overwhelming. I'm sure
Oh,
you've
yeah.
gone through that of like, oh my gosh, what do I tackle first?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the easier, the simpler you keep it, I like that. It is overall.
Yeah.
Could be.
Something that you mentioned when you first were describing your recovery too is the progression from walking with different devices,
Yeah.
or challenging yourself. So you were mentioning you started in a walker, then you started in the wheelchair, you went to the walker, then you went to, I'm assuming, a cane maybe, or then you went to nothing. So
Yeah.
um, it's always good to try to challenge yourself and push yourself off of those devices just in the safest way possible. You want to make sure you're setting up your environment appropriately. You have different plans in place to make sure that if something were to go wrong, do I have a chair? Do I have something to hold on to? Am I listening to my body when I'm feeling like I'm having a harder time, like that difficulty? Um, but I do like to explain like the give and take of challenging walking and challenging different tasks depending on what you want to work on. So if we take into consideration like balance and walking speed, this is like my favorite thing, easy way to compare like how you may want to um, like approach walking and trying to improve balance on one end and trying to improve speed and endurance on the other end. So say we're walking and we want to really challenge our speed, but we also have a little bit of balance deficit and we're using maybe a straight cane to walk, an AFO to walk, things like that. Maybe we need to help our balance a little bit more to challenge our walking speed. Because if we're challenging ourselves with walking speed, we don't want our balance getting in the way and limiting us from being able to go as fast and far as possible. So say you're challenging your speed on the treadmill, you may want to hold on to the rails because you're taking a little bit more from your body's ability to do a harder task of walking fast. You may have to help yourself a little bit balance wise. Now, say you want to try walking and challenging your balance. We may, get rid of the device, get rid of the AFO and trying to balance and really figure out weight bearing and clearance and all that stuff. Um, However, we may be walking slower because we're really focusing on balance. So you see how like you may have to have a give and take when you're challenging yourself. So I am going to challenge my balance, but I may have to understand that my speed isn't going to be my fastest speed because right now I'm really targeting my balance. And sometimes people feel like they're almost setting themselves back. Actually, today I was just working with a client and we were doing stair training and which is a form of walking training, right?
Mm-hmm.
And first we used one rail um, with two hands on the rail. So that balance wise is giving a lot of stability because I have two hands on a stable surface. And she was able to do it pretty smoothly. Then we switched to a cane and a rail. So we're going from one stable surface and one helper, but it's wiggly, right? It's not as sturdy as a rail. So now she went a little slower and it was more difficult for her to kind of motor plan. And I explained to her, that this doesn't mean that we're regressing. You're not getting worse. We're just challenging you more. So we're going to see a little bit of a difficulty or a reduced quality of your movement because I'm challenging your balance more. So she obviously wasn't going to be able to do the stairs as quickly because now we're challenging her balance. So people can get bored with, okay, I don't know how to challenge myself anymore. If you start kind of playing around with the device, with the speed, all those different things will continuously be able to challenge just your ability to walk in general, right? So I just think those are like good little tips to give people when they're trying to do it on their own.
Yeah, that's a really great one.
I Ways that I approach my, my services to my clients.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's a great reminder. It's not that you're going backwards, but you're adjusting again to try to figure it out, and it's always a plus.
Exactly, exactly. So and understanding that maybe we need to change things up depending on what the challenge of the day is. So I have had some clients try to, they're going to be out for a long day. So maybe we're challenging basically your endurance. If you're going to be walking the mall for 2 hours, that's a huge challenge to your endurance, right? So maybe we need to give you a little bit of help using your AFO and using your cane. But say you're walking in the grocery store, which is, you could be around the grocery store in like 20 to 30 minutes. That's when maybe we can challenge you to not use a cane, not use the AFO because we're pulling back on the endurance front of things. So we can focus a little bit more on the balance challenge. So just really nice ways of incorporating different things while still walking. Because it's like, oh my gosh, how much do I have to actually walk? But we can make it fun and really integrate it into your everyday life because why should we have to set aside time to work on therapy when you could just do it when you're doing your errands or you're doing stuff around the house? We just add it in and it makes it easier, more fun, and more relatable.
Yeah, I did that a lot. You just started getting creative, turning everything I feel like into therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my clients, She always would have her husband take her to the bathroom in her wheelchair instead of walking to the bathroom and walking back. And finally, we just kind of nipped the wheelchair in the butt. And I said, if you just plan this a little bit better, so instead of going to the bathroom when you're like, I need to go to the bathroom, do it 5 or 10 minutes before that. So we're not in that haste of having to reach the bathroom, but so that you can take an extra walk every time you use the bathroom. That's a perfect way of increasing repetition throughout the day, right? So I don't know, you go to the bathroom 3, 5 times. Me, I go to the bathroom 5,000 times a day.
Yeah.
Just think about it. If taking the wheel, even if you were to do it 1 or 2 or 3 more times a day, actually just walking there and walking back to your spot on the couch or whatever you were doing, sitting at the dining room table, it will just add easily in more and more repetition instead of like, okay, it's time for me to go and walk around the house in a circle now. Like, who the heck wants to do that?
Yeah, yeah. So good.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
wonder, does anyone have any questions
Yeah.
for us? I haven't been able to really look at the chat.
Yeah, someone said I have drop foot. It affects my walking in the treadmill too. What do I do?
Okay, so my concern is if we're seeing like toe curling, sometimes the drop foot has to do with tone and not weakness. So, typically what happens if it's more of like a tone issue, we want to get better endurance and have that muscle not fatigue as much, because we'll notice like tone and all of the tightness kind of comes when we're challenged. So if you see someone really working hard, sometimes they like tense up, or if they're doing something that they're scared of, the anxiety comes in, the toe curling can happen. So um, really working on continuously trying that activity will help with the tone, because just in general your muscles will get stronger and you'll have better the tone will be a little bit more relaxed from those outside things. You could also use some sort of an AFO or a brace to help control that drop foot, if it's due to either strength or tone, where it'll help clear that foot. There are like easy methods that you can see if this would work. Like you can order on Amazon. They have the little ones that looks like a little ankle brace, like it kind of wraps around the ankle and it goes onto the shoelace to help pull up the foot, where that'll help with making sure that the foot's clear. Um, but again, it really depends on like the reason why the drop foot is happening. So if it's a tone thing, doing those tone like prep activities and like stretching and relaxation stuff, and then also just getting better at the task. But if it's a drop foot strength thing, doing kind of what I was mentioning before, working on really like clearing and lifting the leg, like with a hurdle, trying the steps, all different things like that. And then just keeping note of when the dragging begins to happen. So you can start seeing improvements. So say you're on the treadmill, you're walking okay for a minute, then the foot starts to drag. Document that, write that down. Then you try the treadmill again. You keep practicing. Okay, now I'm doing a minute and 10 seconds. That's when my foot starts to drag. So you'll start to see that the endurance in those muscles in the front of the leg will start to get stronger and not fatigue as quickly and cause drop foot. I hope that helps. But if you have more questions, you can go ahead and message me as well.
Yeah, that was such a good explanation. I know that I have a problem with if I don't stretch and like I do a lot of deep breathing and stuff, and I think that helps for the muscle to relax. But they start tightening up again. And one of our friends, she's a stroke survivor, and I think it's been over 5 years since she's had hers. And when she gets fatigued and tired, her drop foot starts coming back.
Mm-hmm. So this is very similar to kind of what I was saying with, if you're going out for the day or you're doing something like treadmill, when you really, really want to challenge endurance, maybe that's when we wear the AFO. So then we don't have to worry about the toes getting in the way. But then we could really target it outside of, doing those longer distance walks with, okay, let's see how many times I can walk around the house, or if I can walk up and down the block without my foot fatiguing. And that's a really, really good way to start challenging and improving and seeing the progress in the endurance of that foot. And I think tone is just a really like, almost like a tough topic to talk about, because people get touchy with it. And there really isn't good evidence behind a lot of therapeutic services to improve tone. So when I say improve, I mean all the time, where like I'm going to stretch you and your tone's just going to be better and it's never going to get worse again. That is true, where like if I were to stretch you, it's going to feel better. We're going to get some relaxation, but probably later on the tone's going to start getting tight again. But still doing those relaxation things, like you were saying, Fat, like with the breathing and just trying to like be more mindful, doing stretching, adding a little bit of heat and gentle movement can prep you really nicely for exercise. Because the reason that we have difficulties with tone is we've got limited range of motion to actually use the muscle the way we want to. So if we prep the joint so that we're able to actually get better range of motion during activity, then we could do the activity better and strengthen within that range before the tone kind of comes back and
Mhm.
bothers us. Does that make
Yeah, that makes
sense? So like if I have someone who is having difficulty with tone, I usually give them muscle prep activities prior to therapy, like prior to their exercise program, prior to therapy, where we're working on tone and range of motion, relaxation techniques, and then doing strengthening after, because we're going to have better range to work within before we actually do. You know, if you're stuck here, we're not going to be able to do much strengthening, right? But then if I get you to relax in your arms here, we could at least strengthen here, and then later on you'll
yeah.
be back, unless you know you continuously do this all throughout the day, where it'll be kind of like a fluctuating ebb and flow of tone. But at least in that moment, we're able to get some good repetition and strength through that muscle in a specific range of motion. So it works for, you know, the ankle, the arm, really wherever tone is giving you a problem.
Yeah, I really like that. I don't see any other questions.
Question.
Uh,
Well, if anyone has any questions too, this is my Instagram, so you can feel free to DM me. Don't be a stranger. Um, we can, you know, chat whenever. Someone did just mention I'm looking into getting the Bioness. Any recommendations or thoughts on the device? Bioness is a very good thing to use as a tool. From people that I know, they don't like to use it all the time because it is very uncomfortable. So I'm not sure if people have, if any of you have gotten NMES, like electrical stim, to get a contraction. It has to be a lot stronger than your typical like electrical stim for like pain, where like it really is like an uncomfortable, like pinchy feeling. So literally every step you take, you'll have that pinchy feeling in that part of your, you know, in your kind of like the top part of the front of your shin, a little bit to the right. That's kind of where that device sits. However, it is known in research to really help with activation of those muscles. So it is a good tool to have. Typically, I would say if like you're on the fence of like investing, just make sure that there's a good return policy, just in case you don't like it. I've tried it literally on myself, and it's very uncomfortable. And sometimes, just depending on your anatomy, sometimes it's hard to get dorsiflexion. The foot will really go into good eversion, so like kick, like rotating up and out instead of, you know, pulling in into an inversion, like foot drop position. It'll come this way, but it won't come up. And it's just because of like the way that your tendons and your muscles are kind of just sitting in your body. It's different for everybody. So I would just like make sure that you have the ability to return if you don't like, or you have a good therapist to work with you on timing when the device goes off. Because what happens is it's a timed device with like a pressure sensor in the foot, in the shoe, where the minute the heel becomes to like comes off of the ground, the device turns on and gives you dorsiflexion for clearance. So if you don't have that timing right, then you also can have some difficulty. So it's just really a touch and go device. Wonderful. Just, you know, with any device, expensive. And like, if you're not really going to use it, I wouldn't invest the money.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good answer. Someone said, which robotic assisted therapy is more beneficial for a natural gait? I have access to Hokoma's Locomat and Cyberdyne.
Big
How
bleed
be
23 months in. So this is going to be really controversial as well. for stroke recovery, for chronic stroke recovery, body weight support and robotic assistive therapies are not recommended because you are more likely to just let the robotic device do the work for you. These are more so better for people with like spinal cord injury, spina bifida, you know, like those types of things that like people, it's more of like getting the range of motion going. But the best way to really work on walking is to do something where you're physically actively moving through the range and your body is connecting with it, because there are studies that show that when we put people in those machines, there's no real carryover to you know, real walking. Um, if you were looking into something, even like body weight support training isn't really highly recommended at all in like therapies. But if you'd like to try something to see if you can get a better natural gait, something like an anti-gravity treadmill may be good for you. So like the Alter G, if any places have that. But really, you don't need any of those big pieces of equipment for really good gait training.
Okay. Wow, Dr. Sam, that was such good information. I really enjoyed
Thanks.
it, and I know I can tell everyone did too. Hey, thank you, guys.
Yeah. Any questions, feel free to reach out to me. We can chat about it as much as you'd like.
Yeah,
There's any big recommendations that we're seeing, like people want to hear more about it, we could always have another live.
yeah,
I'm more than happy to join you
yeah.
again.
Guys, make sure you're joining Dr. Sam, okay, or you're following Dr. Sam. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, you do have great content, and then also connect with any of us if you have any questions, and
For sure.
we're
All right,
yeah,
Pat, enjoy your day. It was so nice talking to all of you.
yeah. Thank you so much. You too. Okay.
All right, we'll
Yeah.
chat
Fun.
soon again.
All right.
Bye.
Okay. Take care.